So for 37, this is an inelastic collision. And the reason why you know it's an inelastic collision is because it says the bullet becomes embedded in the block. So when they stick together or become embedded, they have to move together as one object. So I'm going to do exactly what I did in the last problem. I'm going to list my facts. So a bullet amassed 30 grams. Now look, the bullet is in grams, and the block of wood is in kilograms. So I need them to be in the same unit. Doesn't matter whether you have them both in grams or both in kilograms. I'm going to keep them in grams. That way I don't have any decimal numbers. So I'm going to have M1 as 30 grams. And it strikes a wooden block of mass 6.5 kilograms. So M2, 6.5 kilograms would be 6,500 grams. And you don't have to show me the conversion for that, because when it's just a metric conversion, I think most people in their head can figure out they're just moving the decimal point to the left or to the right. So you can just write that down. Becomes embedded in the block. The block and the bullet fly off at 1.20 meters per second. So that means after the collision, they do that. So that's the common velocity that the bullet and the block are going to have. So I don't have a V1 prime and a V2 prime. I just have a common V prime, because they're both going to have the same thing. So that's going to be, whoops, that number was given as 1.20 meters per second. Well, and the question is, what was the original velocity of the bullet? So the velocity of the bullet was 1, so that's our unknown. And what was the velocity of the wooden block? I mean, well, yeah, before the bullet hit the wooden block, what was the velocity of the wooden block? 0. So those are your facts. And notice I used 1 and 2. Some people like to use letters, because if you're dealing with two objects, maybe B for bullet and W for wood. That way you won't make the mistake, because I've seen people on the test where they have these right, but then they mix these up down here. Like they now call V1 the block of wood, and V2 is the bullet, so they mix them up. So sometimes using letters might be a way that you don't make that mistake. So I don't care if you use numbers or letters. So once I have these, this is an inelastic collision. So I'm going to write my law of conservation of momentum, but the one that is specific to an inelastic collision, which is when I combine the two velocities into one velocity after collision, you have this. So there is your equation. Now, any one of those variables could be the unknown. In this one, V1 happens to be the unknown. So that's the unknown. Well, and also in this problem, V2 is 0. So if V2 is 0, then I can actually cancel that out, make my algebra even a little bit easier to do. I don't have to even do step 4 if I cancel it out, because I already now have my term containing the unknown isolated. So all I have to do is move the M1 down there, and there's my algebra. So step 3, V1 is going to equal M1 plus M2 times V prime divided by M1. So at this point you would have, so this problem I would probably, because there's only 5 facts and not 6, I would only be able to give you 5 points for the facts. So I'd probably give 1 there and 2 there, because just to come up with 10 points. And then 2 points for the answer. So V1 is going to equal, I'm going to use brackets because the formula already has parentheses. And I'm going to have M1 plus M2, close the brackets, V prime, all divided by M1. And so M1 in this problem is 30 grams. So it goes there and there. And the wooden block is 6,500 grams. And it moves off with a velocity of 1.20 meters per second. And if you solve that, we should get a big number, because the top number that I'm multiplying by is bigger than the bottom number I'm dividing by. And that came out to be what did I say, 261 or 261. So there's nothing in these problems that's really should be that heavy. As long as you can list the facts. Like I told you, the one mistake that I see is signs missing. So be careful when you're doing a problem. If an object bounces back, then whatever sign you had it to begin with, it has to have the opposite sign after. Sometimes it might start moving with a negative, and so when it bounces, it would be positive after the collision. Depends on which one you're looking at.